Welcome to the 47th NSTHA Ask the Chief Forum. This forum, I'm going to start out with a member story, which I have been threatening to do for the last couple of forums, but we're going to start out with one, and it might be something that I would like to do maybe from time to time with members who have what you would consider strange or paranormal stories, things that have happened to them. So this will be the first one. And member Nara has a story.
Okay. When I was about 7 years old, I shared a bed with my sister and our nanny. One night, something happened that I have never forgotten. As I lay there, half asleep, I began to hear the sound of children laughing, followed by light footsteps moving around the room. I was terrified, but not enough to cry out. At that age, I was more afraid of waking my sister than of ghosts. So I stayed completely still, pretending to be asleep, hoping it would pass. Then my body began to numb. I realized I couldn't move. I couldn't lift my arms, couldn't turn my head. Sleep paralysis had taken over. Panic crept in, slowly, then all at once. I tried to call my nanny, desperate to make a sound, any sound, but no voice came out. My mouth opened, but nothing happened. I was trapped inside my own body for what felt like minutes. Eventually, I could move again. The room was silent. Years later, I learned something that gave that night a disturbing context. In Thai culture, there is a belief in Guman Thong, a child spirit said to be bound to an object, often kept for protection or good luck. Many people believe it can manifest as the sound of a child, laughter, footsteps, playful noises. At the time, a staff member had left a bottle believed to contain a Guman Thong in the house where we were staying. Until today, I still remember the laughter and the moment I realized I couldn't scream. The end.
Okay, very good. Well read. My question is like the Gumantong, where would one acquire something like that?
Actually, from monk, yeah, at the
Uh,
temple, from monk or the shop that sell amulet, but usually from temple, from monk, especially in the old days, yeah.
Now, were the shops connected to the temple, the separate?
Yeah, I think it has to be blessed by
By the monks?
yeah.
Oh, very interesting. But that I'd say with Gumantong would be something like a fetish. And they usually have those for what good luck or protection or something like that.
Yeah.
Which was it? Like protection or both?
Both, and then you can see in the period Thai movie in the old days, monk usually use this like little boy spirit, which is a Guman Tong, to do the errand. Like, hey, can you go like check on this? Can you go like call this person for me or something? So yeah. So
it's like they trap this.
Minion, yeah.
Okay, like you said, like a minion, or like with with the witches who have familiars.
Yeah.
Now, do they use ashes of a child or something like that?
So it's believed to be using like a part of the child's fetus or something. So.
So what can be part of the flesh of a child or something, or they?
Yeah, but that kind of like made illegal, so they replace it with wood and oil.
Uh-huh.
So they replace the human flesh with oil because that can be.
Yeah, well, yeah, they wonder how they came about or how they got the flesh. Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wild things in the world, but okay, great. Thanks for the story.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to continue with the true logics, asking about the true logics and having me explain true logics that you need or feel that you need more explanation for. So we'll start with the first question. We're going to spin that wheel, spinning the wheel now. Fire.
Okay, so the true logic, are you putting your best foot forward or your best lie forward?
Ah, okay. Well, that particular true logic has to do with people being deceptive, which happens a lot. So if well, they always say that show your best face, or the literally putting your best foot forward is really like putting on an act for someone that you're meeting for the first time. So really, it is an act, and in most cases, it's deceptive. But I believe that most of us use it. It's considered to be pretty much a normal way of dealing with individuals that you're meeting for the first time, and usually having to do with situations where there is perhaps something that you want. For instance, if you're looking for a job or something, you put your best foot forward. You dress up nicely, even if you're not someone who likes to dress up. Whatever you do your hair. You take a shower and all of that. Brush your teeth, and then you have your nicest demeanor. And really, it is a deception, really is. But that goes throughout, the whole matrix. There's always people are always deceiving one another, trying to present them in a way that in a way that they feel that that person might be more favorable to. So that's what it means when they're talking about putting your best foot forward or your best lie. In reality, you're really putting your best life forward, you know, because we've all have had situations, even when it comes to, this elusive illusion of romance, when you're trying to get someone to be interested in you. You're not going to, show up in front of them, scratching yourself or picking your nose or whatever. You know, you're going to literally, try to be as straightforward or polite as possible. But then there's also a different kind of, I don't know if it would be your best foot forward or your best lie. I'd say this one might be your best lie in a way, but there are individuals that come in and they not kind of, but they try to charm the person in a sense. It sounds like the same thing, but it's a little bit different. There's an intensity to the person. A lot of times it has a lot to do with eye contact. So it's as though they're testing to see how strong your jockey is. So if they look into your eyes and you kind of, your eyes dart away or whatever, they feel that, maybe I can intimidate this individual into doing something that I want them to do. And sometimes you'll find that with certain salespeople, but also when I was in my late teens and early 20s, guys would talk about macking. So when they see a woman and they want, literally, there's only one thing they really want from them, or maybe a couple things. They want sex from them, so they'll mac to try to make this woman think that there's somebody that can be trusted or whatever, and that they can, in other words, let their hair down with, or with the eye contact, some kind of putting just a little bit of a control intimidation where that person might be afraid to actually turn that individual away. So there's variations to it. But the basic one is the one having to do with, if you're meeting someone's, if you have a relationship and you're meeting someone's parents for the first time. In most cases, you're trying to, excuse me, in most cases, you try to present yourself in a way where, you don't seem intimidating or you just seem like a nice person. Okay. So anything you think I'm missing with that? And you need a little bit more, or is that good enough?
So when I saw the quote, it made me think about being on my healing journey. And it's like, am I trying my best? Am I giving my all? Or am I lying to myself at times? Like, oh, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's what popped up in my head too when it came to the quote. So I don't know if that applies.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it, really, because individuals do, try to convince themselves that they may be doing their best when they're not, or they'll make excuses like, "I'm a really hard worker," but when but they're not really, a real hard worker. They convince themselves that they are, but sometimes that may have to do with the environment in which they grew up. Perhaps they grow up in a family that just does enough, and if they have to do more than just enough, they complain about it. They say, "I'm working really hard," but then when you get out into the real, so-called real world, and you're amongst individuals who are very serious about career and and excelling in the matrix, you might find yourself with individuals that actually work a lot harder than you. And sometimes I've actually have known people who would just question someone like, "Why are you working so hard?" But that's just the way that they have grown up. I grew up like that, where all I knew was hard work. And there was no complaining about it. So it wasn't like it was a problem. It was just like today we start out, boom, and we work hard. And with my father unit, he was proud of how hard he could work. So when I worked with him, which was a lot when I was a kid, there's no complaining about it. When you're a little kid, you might want to feel like it, complaining, but with that guy, no, you don't complain. Or you just watch him. He said, "Well, that's how you work." And so I get right in there, and after a while, you're just used to it. So as far as like fooling yourself, yeah, a lot of times it has to do with environment that you grow up in and how hard or how little some people just don't want to work. Period. They come from an environment where things may be not so great because they don't work that hard, or they may come up in a situation where everything's already done. They have enough monopoly money to where they kind of don't have to do much. It's almost like the so-called wealthy. There are those kids of the wealthy who never really had to work that hard. And so if they had to do anything, they're just like, it's a bother. But then there's those who come from that background who have what they call a work ethic. That's what work ethic is about. The whole idea that you go out and you go for what it is that you want and you work hard at it. Okay. Any more? You got anything else with that you want to share? Or is that good enough?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Terrific. So we're going to go to our next Ask the Chief, or not Ask the Chief, but actually True Logic. Thank you. The next True Logic. And we're going to spin that wheel now, spinning the wheel. Ms. L. Hey. First time, long time listener, first time.
Hello, Chief.
Hello, Ms. L.
My favorite true logic is Dunya, Gaia, Earth is going back to her true origins. Hang
Okay.
on, it's going to be a wild ride.
Oh, okay. Well, it seems like you actually understand what that one means, or you do want something.
I do kind of, but I'd like your,
Yeah, my
clarification.
explanation and
Yes.
clarification. Yes. Well, the way things are going, and I'm quite sure if you've been paying any attention, there's a lot of what they would consider with bizarre things that have been going on in the last 5 years or so. A lot of sightings of anomalies, a lot more sightings of things that some would call, UFOs or what's the new one? UPAs? UPAs is
UAP.
UAPs. Sorry, 'cause I'd like to use UFOs, but I think they switched it up just to throw you off.
Yeah,
So
these people.
Yeah, UAPs. Well, been using UFOs since who knows, like the 1940s or something like that.
Right.
But so there's a lot of these types of anomalies happening, even things having to do with people videoing, the sky and getting two suns or in the night sky. I think the highest count that I remember one of the videos was maybe about 4 to 5 moons that look like moons. Also, I recall about 5 years ago that the moon was changing positions a little too fast. In some cases, it was moving through the sky a little, fast, well, maybe more than a little faster, noticeably faster than it would normally move through the sky due to the Earth's rotation or the lunar rotation. So, and I recall that one night the moon is on the left side of the building that I'm in. And then the same time, the next evening, the moon is on the right side. Now, the fact that I noticed that means that that's unusual. If you're used to just seeing the moon, the moon in a certain position, and it comes up in a certain position, every night as it, slowly changes position anyway throughout the year, but that dramatic, then there's something going on.
Oh, interesting.
So with information that I get, well, I say from my sources, it has to do with Dunia literally starting to regain her power due to the help of others. And those others are not, people who are, we got to save the planet, really. I mean, people are, on Dunia, people are primarily a virus. So I don't know if there's any viruses that are what we consider to be helpful. They talk a good talk. We got to save, this huge for us, that is, as planets go. Dunia Earth is not, amongst the biggest planets at all. But the whole idea that they can, well, if we stop using as much plastic, then Dunia will survive. If we do these things or that things or whatever, Dunia will survive. But again, Dunia is this way because some things or some ones wanted to kill Dunia. I mean, if you watch it and you see the corporations that are connected to the to the system, which is something I mentioned having to do with imperialism. The imperialism was about moving through the planet and taking things and taking over things, and then basically mining and ravaging and cutting down trees and all of this stuff that has nothing to do with anything that looks anywhere like sustainability. Now, over several decades, I would say when I was paying attention, when I was a bit younger, through the 70s all the way up to current times, there's had to do with commerce, but they consider it to be progress when it had to do with money, so-called monopoly money. That they would build these buildings, they remove the trees and everything, and then they put these buildings there, and they put these parking lots there, and it's going to put these certain types of businesses in these areas. But things change, and then those businesses will go out of, in other words, go out of business after a while because everything changed and they weren't able to keep up, and they end up being like a star. There's a lot of industrial parks that were in the States. There was, they were producing things a certain kind, a certain kind of way, and then they, created so-called new technology to make things faster. They didn't need as many people, and then those buildings would end up empty, and just like graveyards. And there's a lot of them around. And I can talk about the U.S. because that's where I spend most of my experience. But there are a lot of these places if they couldn't turn them into something else, and sometimes they try to turn them into some other kind of business, but inevitably they just don't. You know, they would go dead, and then you got this what they used to call an eyesore in these certain areas. And, like I said, abandoned shops, abandoned industrial parks, and all of that. Yeah, and also with mining, they mine and mine and mine and mine until they got as much materials as they wanted from from underground. There's some interesting stories having to do with in Alaska, the Westerners, imperialistic influence individuals were looking for gold. Now, the indigenous folks weren't looking for gold. They were basically living a sustainable existence. They had enough of game and whatever to hunt, and the waters were clean enough to sustain the aquatic life, fish and things like that. So for thousands of years, that's how they lived. Then the imperialists come in and they say, if you find these materials for us, we'll give you a lot of money. Thus the mining. It's like an excuse to dig up. It's really like if you had there was something, I don't even know if that's really true, this flesh eating virus that came on the scene. Well, for me, like in the late 70s or something.
Yeah.
Flesh eating virus. It's like the human as a flesh eating virus, eating the flesh of dunya. And if you see pictures of whatever individuals who have some kind of decay, it's definitely not pretty. So again, with everything that the system was doing to dunya, it was literally as though something that's trying to kill its host. Yeah, but even to this day, there are places you look. They used to have certain strip malls. Everything ages. The architecture gets old. Some things they consider to be classic architecture. A lot of stuff is not appealing to me. It's kind of creepy looking buildings, but they'll preserve some of those things. But when it comes to businesses and like I said, industrial parks and things like that, there's nothing really attractive about them. But because things change, because that's how the system does it, they'll go dormant. They'll end up ending up in ruins, and they're just an eyesore. There are like industrial train tracks and things that you see all over certain areas because they no longer use as many trains to move things around. So all these places end up just being just a mess. But anyway, so what's happening with right now, and why things seem so weird, is because this is the first time that Dunya is reversing what's going on. So even what's happening with people is kind of interesting. And even when they talk about individuals, they use the term unaliving themselves. A large number of individuals have been unaliving themselves. They did say something about murders have been going down, in numbers, but the whole transitioning of humans have been on the rise.
Interesting.
Yeah, and also one of the things that it also does to those who are part of the system, who are part of the viral population, they're putting all this pressure on that population, causing more depression, causing the atmosphere to be really unattractive. Where, again, so-called murders are down, but unaliving is on the rise. And one of the statistics I found about a year ago, that in the the Americas, that some of the highest numbers of unaliving were well-to-do white males.
Mm.
When you would think that the whole idea when I was coming up, you have money, which I call monopoly money, literally. You have a lot of monopoly money. That's happiness. But it doesn't seem to be that way. There's something more valuable that's missing. You can have all the cash, in the world, but if you don't have that one component having to do with a sense of worth, a real sense of worth, not a sense of worth to the system or worth to the industrial or the what do they call, literally the worth to the system. And also those who get into, in the system that deep. I think I had a guy on, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, a couple years ago, who was in finances. He's from Germany. And he said that these guys were basically groomed to, work with the imperialistic system, and they would get all this money to the point where he said, money was just almost like just being thrown at them. He said one of the things that happened with these individuals who are in that system, that financial system, they would all acquire some kind of addiction. You name it, alcohol, drugs, sex, some kind of addiction. And almost like it came hand in hand with becoming so-called financially well off or rich or some even wealthy. So with all that said, what's going on right now is something that is universal. That really is like Dunya's being returned to the broader universe. So energetically, she's literally just having her frequency moved up to the frequency that matches the broader universe. Because one, this world that we're experiencing, this world that we're experiencing is literally little box, little teeny box, maybe barely the head of a needle in a vast universe. The vast universe flows in balance. And it's not like a strict, kind of rigid thing. It has a flow. So things move up a little, down a little, move up, but not to extremes. So when things are in motion, it's like if things are in motion, you feel more alive. If you look at nature and you see what considered to be a static pond, what happens is it's like everything starts to die in it. Gets, what's the term, stagnant. It's stagnant. It starts to smell bad. Yeah. So when there's a nice flow of water through the pond, whether the water's coming from underground or wherever, it's healthier. Yeah. But anyway, that's pretty much as I'm quite sure I could find other examples, but that's for now. That's basically what it refers to. It refers to Dunya literally having help from outside, from the broader universe, to return to the broader universe. Because right now, when things are the way things are and have been, I shouldn't say are because there's a change going on now, but the way things have been, Dunya was dying.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
But go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that's something to look forward to know that everything's gonna revert back to what it should be.
Yeah.
Or move forward how you.
Right. Yeah. Because I have to correct myself sometimes because that's part of the language is you're going back home.
Right.
When in reality she's moving forward home.
Right. Right.
Because once she was pulled away from home, home kept moving. Home kept expanding. There are newer things coming, being created, newer experiences being created within the balance of the universe. So there wasn't like, like Star Trek or some of these space movies that they like to produce from Hollywood or wherever, that we go all the way out there, but everybody's fighting. You need the good with the bad. No, what's happening now is that, no, you don't need any of this stuff called bad. It's just an imbalance. They look at it as an imbalance. And one of the problems that humans, which really like the human machine is really what you are. You're a machine that they call a human, or you're, in this form. You're like a mechanism that's called a human because it has a lot of different things that are inside of it, a lot of different fragments of consciousness that are inside of it. So it's not like I'm a single consciousness. You may be a single consciousness, but you're really a fragment of a consciousness inside of a structure that is called the human body. Because there is the consciousness that powers the human body, and then there's another consciousness that controls the human body.
Interesting.
Yeah, it goes even deeper than that, but that's as far as I'm going to go with that. But yeah, and also what happens and the issue that a lot of individuals have here is what happens once I transition out. There are certain religious beliefs and whatever as to what will happen. There's some kind of heaven scenario with some of the religions and so on. But in reality, I wouldn't hazard to guess that most humans don't know and they don't really trust it. If you're in a so-called in a religion or whatever, that guarantees that if you do the right thing, you're going to go to a heaven.
Right.
Yeah, you have to not be, one, they like to mess with the whole concept of sex and sexuality is something that's a construct of the dense environment anyway. Because it's really, really, it's very trying. I mean, one of the roughest things for a young man, and in being that this is what my avatar is male. When you get into puberty, man, that's a pain in the butt because you're standing there and your member's just doing this, hello, hello, every time or you can look at a little girl when you're a little boy, and it's just another kid. Get to puberty at a certain age, look at a little girl, hi,
Okay.
and then then the people start to, well, I have this urge that needs to be fed. I have this urge that needs to be fed. You're trying to do practical things, but there he is waving hi. Yeah. So again, that these are things that are basically introduced into consciousness in the universe, literally. And so the whole idea of dunya evolving, there are individuals like, I'm tired of this, just come, take me the hell out of this. And then there are others like, what will happen if I die? And it's literally the vehicle that will basically cease to work, but your consciousness will continue. But depending on where your mind is and what you believe in and how contaminated you are, depends on what happens once that vehicle dies. And it's not about a heaven or hell. Because as I said before, we're already living in a hell.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a version of hells. And from my experience and the work that I'm doing, yeah, there are things that are considered to be like hells on the other side. But those on the other side don't even call them hell. They just call them just another place of punishment, really. And there are a number, you might see some of my other videos where I'm talking to individuals through the empaths, where some of those individuals on the other side are behind doing things to your avatar, to your consciousness while it's in the avatar. And I said, have you ever been, have you ever had a human experience that has been in a human vehicle? I said, not for me. There's somebody said, well, that's okay. Well, I see that you're really not interested. You feel that that's not the best place to be. And one of them said, yeah, because it's very limited. You're confined. You can't do the things that they can do in their realm. But then I had to hit them to the fact that they are limited in comparison to to the broader universe.
Interesting.
So there's levels of limitation. And being in the human form is the lowest, has the least, has, of course, it has the most limitation of it. Yeah, has the most limitations.
Mm.
But if you think about it, there are consciousness who will say that before this thing called the Matrix, they had total control over their consciousness and how they wanted to look and how they moved and how they felt. Here, they got, there's always some kind of issue where you need this herb or that herb or this healing, or when the system throws doctors, you need a doctor, which means that there's something wrong with this.
Mm.
If your energy can't sustain itself, really, which means that your energy is trying to sustain a structure. That's what the human body is. A vehicle, a structure. It's like, cars and things like that. There are others who, even some First Nation stories about people who can actually move through space really fast, within the matrix. Because whatever they're tapped into from the other side, they don't need a car. They don't need an airplane to go, from this point to that point. And you'll find if you search, you'll find stories about individuals who can, in other words, move from one point to another point without a vehicle. They don't know exactly how they do it, but they don't really need a vehicle.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, if you get in a vehicle, you rely on the vehicle, you rely on this body, where you're basically dumbed down into believing the body is what the system tells you the body is. They don't want you to actually try to, elevate yourself, to a higher point. But there are people who try. But because things control what goes on with the human body on the other side, they may do you a solid, but at a price.
Mm.
There are individuals, I've seen some videos of some individual who considers himself to be a shaman in Africa who can levitate himself.
Mm. Wow.
And then there's some video of, well, I do have a way of finding out whether something's fake or not, but there have been some videos, even out of some areas in Europe, like in some countries, where these women who consider themselves to be witches or whatever can literally levitate. Excuse me. Or there are magicians in the West. There's this guy, Chris Angel, you might have heard, you might be aware of. And one of his tricks was to walk up the side of the building. And they're videoing this, with all, these people on the street. It's not really a setup. These people are basically hired, and then they got cables to pull this guy up. When you look at it, this guy literally is walking up the side of a building.
Wow. Wow.
But that's because things on the other side are assisting him, pushing him up
Interesting.
the side of the building. They talk about, when I was a kid, they were talking about monks in the Himalaya mountains who could walk, vertically up the side of a mountain. And that's something that's true also. But they can't do that without the permission of the things on the other side. So when you're able to do any of these things, to wow the other humans, there's a price that you pay for being able to do that. There are things you have to do for them in order to do that. And it all revolves around essence. Okay. But anyway, those are some, these are some of the things that they would consider to be anomalies. But again, going back to the original question, Dunya is literally, say returning, but moving forward home. And that's what's happening. It's moving forward home.
Sounds good, Chief.
Okay. With that, I did have something else, but it just kind of slipped my mind for now, having to do with the whole idea of what magic is. And on the other side, the broader universe, the real, whatever you want to call it, magic doesn't exist because all the things that the magicians can do is barely a thought for someone experiencing a humanoid avatar on the other side. Chris Angel walks up the side of a wall. They go, cute. Oh, yeah, a little parlor trick. But we can do that, in our most infantile form, we can, do more than that. How about you walk up the side of the building, then fly? They said, well, I'm walking up the side. I haven't made the deal with the things on the other side to do the flying thing yet. Yeah. They said, we don't need permission. There's no magic. It's just things that consciousness can do. Okay, with that, then, well, you already said that you got enough.
Yeah, that was very informative.
Okay.
That makes me think of more questions now, but
yeah, we'll have to wait till the next one. Okay, so we can move on with the next question, and we're going to spin the wheel. Spin that wheel. Mimosa, what you got?
Mine is, is it a missed opportunity or an intro to new possibilities?
Oh, okay. That falls in the line of if there's something that you attempt and it doesn't quite work, is that a failure, or is that a term that there's some that use called a teachable moment. So something that doesn't work, and literally, it just has to do with not being afraid to try things multiple times. So sometimes you may have to try things a couple times to realize that this is something that is not something that's going to work for me personally. Or depending on how stubborn you are, but the thing is not to be too stubborn, because there are some things with the limitations in this realm where they talk about the laws of nature. It's more like the laws of limitation that they write in. So can you read it again? Because I pulled it into another potential true logic where it talked about something being a teachable moment. I don't know if I did one on that or not, but if you can read that one again, and I'll stick with that.
Mm-hmm. Is it a missed opportunity or an intro to new possibilities?
Oh, okay. Yeah, this one also it has to do with individuals sometimes, and it has to do with what's going on the other side too. That there's they're looking for, let's say, something simple like a job in a certain location, and they're going out for this particular kind of job, and they don't get it, and they feel kind of bummed out about it. But maybe that's because that's not something that's flowing with whatever their scenario is supposed to, their scenario, literally. So you miss that job, and this happens a lot. You miss that particular opportunity, so it feels, but something else comes along that's better. And this does happen quite a bit with individuals. And there's a whole story about why and how that happens, because there are scenarios that we come into this world with when we come into these avatars. There's the things that, like the jockeys, they have a script, but it's a loose script. That has to do with what kinds of things they want you to do in the future, from the time that you're so-called child to the time that you're an adult. The kind of experiences that you have as a kid, what kind of so-called family you come into and grow up in, the kind of individuals around you that will influence you in a certain way. And 9 times out of 10, in the matrix, it's something that feeds the matrix, but that's beside the point. But the idea that you think you missed an opportunity, or you missed the bus, or you missed your ride, or you missed the plane, and then in the news the next day the plane crashed, or there's a wreck on the highway, and usually you would be driving in that locale at that particular time. So those are also those type of situations. But again, it's kind of a basic true logic, because it doesn't go into the complexities of how those opportunities may be missed, and why those certain opportunities that you think is an opportunity will be missed. Sometimes there's something that wants to torment you, that you'll miss opportunities that maybe would work out for you, but it depends on what your jockeys are doing, or who maybe wants to interfere with with what you're doing. So as far as that one, if you want, you can give me some idea if there's something else that you would like having to do with that, that would take it a little deeper for you.
Like I had a similar situation like you just explained with the job last year, that I talked about with you about. And so when I applied for jobs, like they just didn't work out, and I didn't know why. And my initial thought was like, did I do something wrong? Is something missing? Is something like on the other side, some jockey or whatever, like messing with these opportunities? And then only months later, it turned out that, and also when I talked to you, that it was just not for me to get those jobs. And then another couple of months later, like I understood why. But during the time where things didn't work out, yeah, I was bummed, because like with this one job, I really wanted to get it. And I was wondering if there is like a way to like tell if something is like, so to say, meant for me, or if I should just let go and look for another way to do things or to move forward, and not fall into this trap of self-doubt and like thinking that it was me who did something wrong, or that I took a misstep, or yeah.
Okay. Well, the game of being in the matrix, in the system, in the avatar, it's about feeding. So there are times that they will do that in order for you to feel that way, because when you feel uncertain, actually the key to you feeling that way is fear. So you want this job because you want to basically be able to support yourself, or you have a job that you're not really happy with, that's literally leeching the essence off of you because you're unhappy there. And they want you to stay in that situation longer so they can feed off you more. But one of the things, if you recall, when I'm teaching you guys, it has to do with slowly, removing fear. Because you have no fear, losing that, or missing that, what you consider to be an opportunity, is not going to really affect you much. But also understanding that you are not the physical body. So if you connect your mind to this body being you, which is something that is manipulated. And I say all people who are not, studying with me, don't know that there's something else that's manipulating their bodies, manipulating the direction that they go in. I said before that most all people hear voices of some sort in their head, and at times they think it's themselves. And then there's times when individuals know that there's something else talking in my head that I don't think is me. So with being in the matrix, if you're going out for something that seems like it'll definitely improve your situation, usually your financial situation or your peace of mind, they can interfere with that just to keep you in that zone of where you're stressed. And when you're stressed, you're leaching out essence. And basically it's whittling away at your life force, so to speak, or your higher consciousness, fragmented higher consciousness, mind you, energy. But I would say your higher consciousness energy. But when you lose the fear, they can't really leech anything off of you. And also understanding that there are such things as jockeys and such things on the other side that try to control you. What I do with what I'm training guys is to understand that you can take control over the avatar by reversing in other words, the belief that this avatar is you, that only some sky being or something has dominance over what direction you'll go and whether things will go well for you, or the whole concept of luck. Now, it has to do, what I'm talking about has to do with what you perceive this existence as. Now, when you're looking for a job, yeah, there are the situations you want to be in this game. You have to find some way, depending on where you live, of course, of making money. There are places in the world where they were considered to be indigenous and deep in rainforest or something, who still live, in not as many, but live with the nature that's there. They're not interested in buying a new car or renting the most modern apartment or buying a house, because they feel that they have enough with what they're doing. They're not really being bombarded with this thing that tells you whatever you think you have, it's never enough. So these are all these things that play into that, into feeling bummed out because, oh man, I thought I was going to get this because I could use more money, I could use a new vehicle to get around or whatever. Excuse me. I can, I want certain things that may not be totally necessary, but it depends. I went through that system. I bought the houses, I bought the vehicles, and there's a lot of times when you work really hard for some things, once you get it, it's not so interesting anymore. Sometimes individuals will get these things and then they get bored with it. Again, why would individuals, when they're talking about the unaliving rates that were going up amongst well-off individuals, why would they get to a certain point where they're just like, screw this? Because it's not fulfilling. But again, to go back to the basics, is if when you're working within what I'm doing, the neo-shamanic movement, and you're dealing with those on the other side who work with me, and once you're working with me and you're doing what is basically the things that you should be doing, they will work with you and they will give you things that are more fulfilling. Or if you get a different job, they will get you into that situation where you can get that job, but there's a lesson behind it. When you're working with those on the other side who are light, not talking about the density, there's no blood to pay. It's just that your psyche is adding to the energy of the elevating of the consciousness in the world. The elevating of consciousness towards the higher consciousness of the universe. So yeah, there's times you will go through these, these particular things like looking for a job and getting this, that, and the other. And yeah, if it's for you to literally be able to support yourself so you can continue your studying what I'm teaching, it will be fulfilling. Because as you know, there's some things that you're capable of doing now that most people can't do because of your studying, because you're studying with me. There's information that you get through studying with me that is a lot more, I believe, I don't know, was it you who said that you find it more interesting dealing with the realms that I'm teaching than the realms of the matrix?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, I said that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's because you basically, in other words, I want to use the word surrendered or whatever, but you decided to actually trust in the teachings. And you're finding that there's worth beyond the material. And that with that, you will get everything you need in this realm to do the work that is good for you. Which is good for you means that it is good for the higher realms. If that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense. It definitely gives me food for thought, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. It's just, in other words, it helps you slowly get rid of the fear. I'm going to say slowly because I don't want anyone thinking that all of a sudden, bang, I'm no longer afraid. That stuff is interlaced. So you get rid of pieces at a time. I have other members who said that some of the things that they run into on the other side before they ran into me, i.e. density on the other side, coming in doing hauntings and all this other kind of crazy stuff that they like to do. With my tools, they lost the fear of those things. So something will creep into their space to get that essence. So, okay, business as usual. We're going to scare the crowd and scare the essence out of so and so. And then they come in, and then that student goes, contain. And then they're like, what the hell? I mean, I think even Ms. Elliott told me at one point that you started using my containment. There were things that would come in, but all of a sudden they got stuck.
Right.
Yeah, they were stuck in the containment wall.
Mm-hmm.
Now they were at your wing instead of you being at their wing.
Yeah, the containment, that's been very helpful because before that, I was having a hard time.
Yeah, you were fighting them in a certain type of way that I would say that the density will tell you how to fight. And why would they tell you how to beat them?
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah. So they say, "Oh, we're giving a ball of light of protection." It's like, yeah, I had to experiment with a number of things, and in order to accept the information that I was getting from the other side, and realize the information I was getting from the other side, because I'm part of the other side, was working to keep these things off of me. And literally, I've moved it beyond keeping them off of me. I send them places. So it's not like, oh, I put up a barrier and they can't get in, Then they go, well, we'll try to catch them off guard next time. It's like, no, you come to me. If they come to you as one of my students, you contain them and you send them somewhere where they won't come back. It won't be a next time when you use my containment. So
definitely works though. It definitely works.
Yeah, Yeah, and you have to literally, just start. In other words, containment is like the first step. It's the first tool that I give any student to use. Therefore, you will see the proof with that, and then therefore afterwards, when I give you more tools, you feel more confident about the other tools that I give you. That this works. He said it was going to work. This works. Well, let's see what the other ones can do. Even in the sense of being able to connect with your higher consciousness, whether it's a fragment of your original or not, with your higher consciousness, and knowing that you can separate from your vehicle in what they would say in your mind. But it's the mind and consciousness is one, really. But what the center will say, oh, you're just imagining, because they don't want you to believe that you can separate your consciousness from the vehicle that it's in to do things on the other side. But you definitely need tools. You need tools, and you need enough energy to power those tools. And I supply the energy to power the tools that I give you. Because as a fragment, things happen to you, and your energy levels are not quite high enough to deal with them. But you study with me, I build that energy up. Use the tools, that makes up for the fact that you have to build your energy levels up in order to combat the things on the other side. But anyway, is there anything I'm missing from that question?
No, thank you. That explanation was awesome.
Okay, great. All right.
I wanted to ask something too, Chief. What you talked about intent, that was very helpful for me too, because you just kind of are saying and just doing it, you have to also have that intent to make it work.
Yeah, and the more you believe in your own intent, the stronger it gets. The more you can do, in other words, even the stronger the tools that I give you, because you're having, in other words, you're really having, my tools are connected to, I would say, the broader universe, not this little box that everybody's in. It's a broader universe. So, which means that you're rejoining the broader universe when you start to use my tools. And you realize that little by little, and the more things that you're able to do, the more things you're able to override, block, send off to places where they don't come back, gives you more confidence. So it's not just more confidence in my tools, it's more confidence in yourself as a consciousness. That I am returning home. Every time I use the tools, I'm getting a little closer to home. But with that, the time has come for me to close down this forum. And thanks to everyone for coming to the 47th NSTHA Ask the Chief Forum. Thank you, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, everyone.